Good morning, all saints. Those of you here and those of you online, welcome to the All Saints Sunday Forum. My name is Sally Howard. My pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the associate rectors here at All Saints Church. For those of you here in the room, if you are new, there are restrooms right outside the room, and we have tea and coffee over, and I've got mine already, over by the side wall. And without further delay, I have the real pleasure of welcoming today Reverend Mary Tororeiy, who is the victor of St. Paul Barstow. And Mary is originally from Kenya, and she was ordained in Kenya, landed in the United States at Virginia Seminary, and has the greatest love story about her find in Barstow that I hope she'll have time to tell us today. We first met Mary at a clergy conference. Was it 2 years? I think 2 years ago. And she blew the entire conference away with her preaching. So we are thrilled. She preached again, and Mike grabbed her almost before she was done and said, "Can we trade places one Sunday?" And so please give a warm welcome with me to Reverend Tororeiy.
Well, thank you, Sally. Just quickly, the love story that Sally alluded to is when I was asked to go to St. Paul's Barstow, they were looking for a priest after the one who was there had retired. And by that time, I lived in Orange County, and I did not know where Barstow was. And so I say to Joanna Sartorius, "Where is Barstow?" And she laughed, and then she was like, "Just look it up." And so I looked it up, and I said, "Okay, I see where it is." And she says, "Okay, you go. If they love you, if you love them, well and good." I almost say hallelujah, sorry. Well and good. And if not, it's okay. And I go this Sunday morning. I'm driving up to Barstow, and the scenery begins to change. And I'd never been to a desert before. And I see the desert, and I am like, "God, what are you doing? What's going on?" And really, it scared me. And I remember at some point thinking, the way Joanna had said, I said, in me, I hope they don't like me. Because I was like, this is scary. The desert was scaring me. But I tell you what, I reach that congregation, and I stand, and I see them, and they saw me, and it was love at first sight. And I have been there. This is my 4th year, and I love them, and I think they love me. Yes, I think I'm sure about that. And so that's my love story with St. Paul's Barstow. They are amazing congregation. Well, that is it. Thank you. When Father Mike asked me to do a presentation in a way that can get us started for Lent, I was reading a book about the theology of Paul Tillich. And I was loving it because this person called Dan Peterson, who is a Tillich theologian, has written a book about the theology of Paul Tillich. I am not a theologian, and so I was reading it and thinking, okay, what's going on here? But I loved it. And when Father Mike asked me, I had just finished reading a chapter on the search for meaning. And I thought, what better way to start Lent than to think about the search for meaning? We know the Bible. We know somebody called the teacher, Ecclesiastes, who writes and asks questions about the meaning of life, the search for meaning. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new"? It has already been in the ages before us. The people of long ago are not remembered, nor will there be any remembrance of people yet to come by those who come after them. So the teacher is kind of inquiring and wondering about meaning, the meaning of life. Literally, the search for meaning. Paul Tillich, the theologian, grew up in Germany during the Second World War. And because of what was going on in Germany, he felt the calamities and devastation of life. He felt a spiritual void, the anguish over the perceived emptiness of life. What he describes as a psycho-spiritual discernment, where things happen and you wonder what life is all about. What is the meaning of life? And so in this time, as he grew up in Germany and trying to understand the meaning of life and the role of the church in it, the role of the church in the world, he hoped for what he called sacred possibilities. And that these sacred possibilities would be able to heal and empower people to overcome the split between how the people felt and the source of wholeness that is God. Don't we oftentimes feel that because of how things are, there's kind of a split between how we feel and the source of life that is God? We think about Ukraine. We think about the women in Afghanistan. We think about the women in Iraq. We think about Turkey and Syria. And sometimes we feel the split between what we feel and the source of wholeness that is God. In that moment, when we feel the split, when we wonder the meaning of life or the meaninglessness of life, Paul Tillich recommends what he called the courage to be. The courage to be is the courage to establish a diagnosis of the spiritual predicament. I, like all of you, like some of you, I have a life on social media. I, I am on Twitter, but the reason why I am on Twitter is because I love soccer. And so when I'm on Twitter, I talk about soccer. But sometimes I talk about other things. And there is this priest on Twitter who is English, and he said one time that he feels some sort of meaninglessness and embarrassment around being a Christian today. Because, and this is what he said, because the Christianity in the public square, the Christianity out there, as he put it, is not the Christianity he espouses. The church as we hear out there, what it stands for, when it's out there right now, sometimes you can almost wish to go under the table and think, I don't stand for that. Paul Tillich experienced that, and that is why he spoke about the courage to be. And he believed that we as creatures are subject to limitations because we have a tendency as creatures to be estranged from God, from the source of life. But we derive our power of being from radiating the depth of God. That we should remember that, even when it seems that the chaos is overcoming us and is all over, but we should never forget that as people who know God, we derive our power by radiating the depth of God. And this is where we get our affirmation. This is what the courage to be means. Because when we are established in that courage, the threats that cause anxiety, the threats that almost make us to wonder about the meaninglessness of life, we are able to resist them. And when we resist the things that cause anxiety, we are able to say yes to life. The courage to be is the power, that power within us that resists the threat of non-existence. And so the courage to be is the courage to say yes to one's own life, in spite of the insecurities of daily existence, or the insecurities of what goes on around us and around the world. The character of such courage is that it works in spite of the threats to our complete self-actualization, like the meaninglessness of life. The hope that we have in God is God's intentions for humanity, that God intends for us to live life and life in abundance. John chapter 10, verse 10. So if God intends for us, for the world, for all of creation, to flourish, to have life and life in abundance, Tillich asks the question, where does the life-destroying forces originate? it originates from being estranged from God, from being distant from God. And so what he recommends is finding our way back to God. And so the good news is that we receive the power from God to resist disintegration, to resist the anxieties of life. And this is what gives us the power to say yes once again to life. There's this image of that was done by Pablo Picasso in 1937. This art distorts and reconfigures a variety of human and animal forms which appear to be in anguish. And this art, this image is a representation of the question of meaning and loss. It's kind of distorted. You have animals there and you have humans, but it is not. It's not well organized. It's kind of distorted, which speaks to the question of meaning and its loss. How to recover meaning? How do we recover meaning when we feel there is lots of meaninglessness? Or when we are in search of meaning? The recommendation is to interrupt daily routine. Pause and ask the question of meaning. There is obviously the fear of stopping or pausing. There is the fear of being still. Because when we pause or be still, there's a possibility of being overwhelmed by the sound of our own anxieties and fears. And so oftentimes, we are afraid to pause. We are afraid to interrupt daily routine because we are afraid to hear our own anxieties and our own fears. When I was a priest in Kenya in the Diocese of Eldoret, there was a missionary from the Diocese of Los Angeles called Pasha Hutchison, and she was doing ministry with children who are born with disabilities. And she introduced to us in the diocesan office centering prayer. And she would invite us to her house and tell us what to do in order to do centering prayer. Well, if you haven't met many Africans aren't really good with quiet. We like to talk, we like to dance, we like life and go on with life. And then Pasha says, centering prayer is sitting quiet and imagining and listening. And the first days, we would look at each other and think, so what are we doing now? Because we weren't really getting it. But with practice, we got it. We were able to sit still and listen. To sit still and try to imagine the presence of the goodness and the source of life. When we pause to think, to ask the question of meaning, there might be some ultimate concern bubble up from the deepest recess of our being. we might be able to hear those concerns that undergird and give meaning to our existence. The concerns that take us beyond interests and necessities to concerns that orient and reorient our whole being to something greater than ourselves. So pausing and interrupting daily routine and pausing and being still is being oriented and reoriented towards something greater than ourselves. By pausing and asking the question of meaning, we will be able sometimes, hopefully, to unplug ourselves from the forces of disintegration, or from our anxieties, from our fears. There's this saying that he who stops to face the question of meaning in his or her life might be a step closer to the rediscovery of lost meaning. That whoever is courageous enough to sit still might be on the journey to recovery, is one step towards the journey of recovery of meaning, or of recovery of what is lost. By pausing and being still is to let yourself be grasped by the question of meaning. And this marks a crucial step in the recovery of the lost dimension of depth. And when we recover the dimension of depth, something shifts in us. We won't be the same again. When we recover the dimension of depth, something is about to change. Our posture shifts toward the source of meaning and the depth of our lives. And by the rediscovery of meaning, we break through to a new and deeper sense of meaning in our lives. The problem, though, is most daily life runs ahead. Every moment is filled with something that must be done, must be seen, or must be said, or must be planned. We find ourselves going and trying to do things to accomplish. We are afraid to sit still. We want to be busy. Because oftentimes this prevents a person from taking a moment to consider the deeper meaning of our lives. But instinctively, we often ignore the loss of meaning by distracting ourselves in a flurry of activity. This activity that always presses forward without considering where it is going sometimes. Just, we want to go, we want to be busy because we are afraid to sit still, afraid to pause and to ask the question of meaning. And this is evidence of struggle about the meaning of life in a time in which humanity has lost the dimension of death. So this Lenten season, I want to encourage us to plan and to pause, to interrupt daily routine. Find time to pause, to be still, to search for meaning, to ask the question of meaning. This Lent, I welcome us as you begin this Lenten journey. To begin this journey of searching for meaning. Interrupt daily routine. Pause. Ask the question of meaning. Don't be afraid. Because oftentimes when we sit to pause, we are afraid of what will happen, the anxieties. What is going to happen to me if I keep quiet? Pause in the presence of the source of life. That is God. Posture yourself towards the source of life, towards the source of meaning and the depth of life. Maybe by the rediscovery of meaning, we break through to a new and a deeper sense of meaning in our lives. Maybe this is what we need to do in a world and society that is marked by a lot of breakdown of meaning. Because there's a lot of breakdown of meaning. Maybe what we can do is to reconnect ourselves. And how best to do it than to interrupt daily routine. Thank you.
Mary, thank you so much. Such a needed message, I think, for me, for all of us. And I want to take this opportunity to allow for questions, bring questions in.
Thank you. What a beautiful message this morning. I really appreciate it. And it's really interesting because, I'm in the season of life that I happen to be in right now, and Lent was always presented as a time of sacrifice, of doing without, and it was a struggle because those things were usually associated with some sort of pleasure to ourselves. I never really saw it from a standpoint of that. It really is an opportunity for reflection that you're really talking about. I wondered in terms of Paul Tillich and the fact that he was a part of, in Germany during World War II, how did that environment, and I know that he's talking, that's probably what spurred his life discussion, but how do you see that in terms of him being able to turn that around, right, and how we can apply that in terms of
For those who are aware, Paul Tillich had to relocate to the US because it just became too much. But there's another scholar, there's another preacher, teacher, scholar, who also has the same had the same challenges, and that is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And we can read both of them at the same time because they experienced the same. And while Paul Tillich left, but he believed, he continued to write and to communicate with the church in Germany at that time and continued to challenge them towards becoming the church for the world. And saying you have to be the church for the world, and you cannot be the church for the world unless you rediscover the source of life. And I think that is true for us. When I was preparing to come to All Saints, I went to your website and I read all the things you do, the amazing things you do for community and everything. But you know where the energy to do that comes from? By by connecting and reconnecting and continually connecting with the source of life. And this is what Tillich was talking about. Even though he left, he continued to give the same message to the church in Germany by saying, this is how the church ought to be, to rediscover meaning in order to be of effect or significance for the world. And Bonhoeffer has the same thing. Bonhoeffer, in fact, when Bonhoeffer, I was reading when Bonhoeffer went to Germany, I was like, why did you have to go to Germany to die? But he believed in the same, that you have to be connected to the source of life. And it costed his life, actually. It costed his own life. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm just talking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this. This question for me, I was a young staff person for with the American Friends Service Committee. My to-do list every day was to kind of sort through, let's see, will it be nuclear war, torture, what will I work on today? It was impossible, and it finally drove me into such despair that I knew that to be able to really choose to live, I was going to have to find a way, just exactly as he's saying. And the way for me turned out to be Zen practice.
Oh.
And because it is simply a very physical way, just as centering prayer is, to learn to settle underneath that tumultuous set of waves of, oh my God, I should be doing something else. Oh my God, this is boring. Oh my God, that constancy, and keep going. And to do this with other people also is taking advantage of God's own, sense of community being the way we multiply our sense of that energy. And to sink underneath that, even for a few moments, we begin to realize, wait, I am already in the belly of God. I am. I just don't feel it. And the connection, I think, very much with African sensibilities, as you're describing them, is very bodily. It's not like, okay, here I am sitting waiting for God to tell me what the meaning of life is. It's not like that at all. It's like settling down into the body, into the breath, into the belly, so you go, oh, I'm alive with all of life. I am now. And it becomes appealing enough so that it stops being something to put on your to-do list, to something to do for Lent, and something that actually is a joy.
Yes.
And a refreshment. And you know that, but I'm not sure everybody in the room would know it. And from that standpoint, I really, we have Monday night meditation we have that I lead. There's also a centering prayer group that's online. Really take advantage of those and learn, because it's not so easy. It's like learning to ride a bicycle or something like that, more than it is picking up a new mental habit. And it takes some time and it takes some encouragement. So thank you for giving us this encouragement.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up Paul Tillich. My dad was a Pentecostal pastor that transitioned on his life journey.
Yeah.
Came AME, got 2 masters and PhD, and he preached Paul Tillich when I was a little girl, and to the Pentecostal church that the church that we had that he pastored. And the things that you were saying in your lesson today brought that back to me. He gave me, I read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's book when I was in high school. And my sister church that I appreciate is Abyssinian Baptist Church in New York, because that's where Paul Tillich went. I'm not Paul, but Dietrich Bonhoeffer went when he was trying to decide what to do. And he went back and into Germany to do the work. But thank you for just bringing up the whole thing of silencing yourself. And I often think about my ancestors on the plantations. What did they do? I mean, they had all this work from sun up to sundown, and it was that meditation that they had to get into that to, and that's something that a lot of us generations later have lost that ability. And while you were speaking, they were singing "Shine on Me," the choir, and it just took me back because that's a Negro, and it was just that, just that praise, "Shine on me," and being in that moment. And I think what Betty's talking about, these are tools that we can use. Old, where you just meditate on a song or a hymn, that really is centering.
Thank you.
Would you be willing to share your practice? How do you do this?
Yeah, I am not good at it, obviously, as I said earlier. That idea of sitting in silence and listening, as I said, Pasha Hutchison introduced to us in Eldoret, Kenya. But I with practice, I became more attracted to it, and so my own practice is I plan my life around waking up early in the morning. And as a priest also, I know if I don't find meaning in the source of life, I won't have anything to offer. And so I have to be intentional about it. So my intention, sometimes I oversleep if I went to bed very tired, but my plan is, my practice is to wake up very early in the morning, read a little bit of the Bible, and I follow a study guide, that a planned study guide where I know today it's Sunday, the 26th of February, and so I read that and pray and just try to sit still for a few minutes and just drink from that moment. And sometimes I have very, very beautiful moments and experiences. Sometimes I am human. Sometimes when I'm thinking so much, I need to do so much, I rush through it. And when I rush through it, I say, yeah, God, we are okay, right? I didn't do so well today. I don't think God is going to strike me down because I didn't. No. But I intentionally plan to do that. And I know it is important because the days I have done that, I feel amazing. I feel so connected to God. I feel so connected to the source of life. But not just feeling connected, I often radiate that depth of God to others. And I think that is important too. And so I use a planned guide to study the Word of God. Sit with the Word. After I read, I sit with it, try to think what it means for me and what it means for my ministry and for the world. Yeah. But I fail sometimes. Don't forget that. But God is gracious. We fail and go back and try again.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I think we have time maybe for one more.
Okay.
Any last
Maybe I just say, Paul Tillich had his own time. Dietrich Bonhoeffer had his own time. And they talked about the role of the church. And I know, as All Saints Pasadena, you do amazing. Keep doing it. Because I believe, as they did, as we do, that as a church, we have a responsibility to the world out there. And we really, while we have responsibility for ourselves to grow in faith, but we have our greatest God bless.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mary. And Mary will be preaching at the next service, so I hope all of you will stick around and join us at 10 o'clock.